He's outside. He wants in. Years ago, I witnessed something I should not have. For the sake of discretion, I will adopt the name Sarah for this post, although it doesn't really matter. I was born and raised in a small town in Germany. Where exactly is irrelevant. I am certain that what is happening isn't just limited to me or to my country, which is why I have decided to make this post. For some context, I live alone with nothing but my loving grandma and our dog. We live in a small apartment consisting of my grandma's bedroom, my own room, a larger living room, a very small kitchen, and an even smaller bathroom. This will be important later as I detail what exactly is happening. Furthermore, important to understand is that our apartment is built with a hallway type system where you have one long, thin hallway with the entrance on one end and the small bathroom at the other, and 4 doorways leading to the remaining rooms I have listed prior. The living room also has a door leading to a decently sized balcony. The balcony can be overseen through a very large triple window setup we had installed recently, courtesy of our landlord. Especially at night, half the living room would now be cast in a dark blue shadow, mixed from both moonlight and the night itself. It was the home I grew up in, with a beautiful view out of every window and only a handful of morally questionable neighbors to irritate me. I was happy here, until precisely 2 years ago. 2 years ago, June 2021, I awoke from my safe and deep sleep when I heard a weird noise coming from my window. Now, we are on the 2nd level of our building, and while we do have a tree behind the house, it's way too far away from any window to disturb us. I was, for obvious reasons, confused and irritated, but did not think much of it at first. However, I personally struggle with keeping up on my hydration on a serious medical level, so whenever I wake up I have this unquenchable desire for some water or fruit juice, anything to stop my stomach from aching. Feeling the pain once again, I decided to quickly go through our hallway into the kitchen to fix myself a quick drink before heading back to bed. At night, our hallway always unsettled me. Sure, I had the glorious beam of light coming from our hallway lamp to protect me, but the switch was literally on the other end of the hallway. There was something off about this hallway at night. Not necessarily the darkness either. Due to my grandma being claustrophobic, we leave pretty much all the doors open. Walking through our hallway just makes you feel exposed. There's a doorway providing a corner to hide behind every 2 steps. Brave as I was, I carried on, getting to the kitchen and pouring myself a nice, cold glass of water. And there it was again, the noise. A tapping of some kind. I wanted to chalk it off as some animal, maybe a bird having interest in our windows. But I got curious. This led me to making the biggest mistake of my life. I decided to listen for the tapping, trying to pinpoint the exact origin of the noise. The living room. Being brave as always, I quickly turned on the hallway lights, then peeked into the living room, only for my heart to almost stop. Outside, on the balcony, a tall, slim figure with a massive, disturbing grin observed me. He stood there, his head leaning to one side like that of a puppy after he saw that I noticed him. I was paralyzed by fear when his grin grew larger, and he slowly pressed himself against the window, making more of his physical features much clearer. He seemed humanoid in form, having a slender human-like torso. He had 2 wide, thin shoulders leading to 2 extremely long and thin arms. His legs seemed to mirror the form of the arms, abnormally long and slender. His neck seemed almost human in a disturbing way, while his head was anything but human. He had this almost cartoon-like oversized grin with massive teeth, gray eyes and clearly visible veins bulging out of his face, and a heavily scarred nose that reminded me of Chris Walker from Outlast. In retrospect, you couldn't reasonably blame me for thinking I was just dreaming or hallucinating. However, there was something off. I wanted to go the child's route, storm my grandma's room and cry myself out about the freshly discovered monster, but I did not dare to look away from it. With some courage, I turned to face the direction my grandma's room was in, then quickly turned back to whatever this thing was. He slowly lifted one of his arms, revealing a long, spindly hand that honestly reminded me more of a spider than of a human appendage. The fact that his fingers were adorned by long, yellowish fingernails did not help. He lifted his finger against the glass window, tapping 3 times before pointing at me. He then pointed into the direction of my grandma's room, shushing at me. He tapped 3 times again, leaving some kind of black mud on the window. I passed out and fell unconscious shortly after. When I woke up, I was in the local hospital, surrounded by doctors, nurses, and my grandma. A tube was connected to my arm, slowly pumping blood into my veins. I tried to explain what happened, but the doctors quickly brushed it off as the delusions and hallucinations of a dehydrated mind. I was given medication and allowed back home after enough fluid had been pumped into me. I was almost inclined to believe the doctor's explanation on what I saw, but when we returned home, I saw that the black mud was still in the window just like it was when I passed out. This made me wary, and for good reason. I never forgot the noise of the tapping. It felt distinct and threatening. More so did I never forget the amount. He tapped 3 times, and my first encounter with him was 2 years ago. Ever since, I constantly see him stalk me in some way or another. I find claw markings on random wooden furniture, get random goosebumps whenever passing the living room, and constantly feel like I'm being watched by something. For the last 2 years, this mudman, as I've come to call him, has been stalking me in ways no human could. I find tiny drops of black mud in my closet and occasionally see a shape similar to his in the corner of my eye. I've tried to do research on this entity, but all I got were results for the Slender Man and the Gross Man, which is an ancient German folktale about a tall, slender figure that kidnaps children. No one wants to believe me, thinking I just have some brain trauma or unsolved delusions since I passed out. I have no way to find out what is going on or how to defend myself, and we are getting closer to June, the month I first saw the Mudman. I'm afraid. The last few months, we repeatedly found deep claw marks and drops of black mud on our windows and balcony doors. My grandma believes this to be some sort of animal. She doesn't believe my story, and neither does she show any interest in the mud. But due to being scared that it's a burglar, I at least meaned to convince her to repeatedly swap out the locks. I don't think that will be enough. We are closing in on the 3rd tap. The Mudman wants inside, and I doubt I'll be able to stop him. I'm spending this night wary of my surroundings to type down this post, to warn you all, to inspire you to prepare yourselves before he arrives. And I am certain that he will. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually he will. I can hear him clawing at the lock, tapping on the windows. Never investigate. Do not let him in. You may wish me luck for the remainder of my time, but I do not suppose it will be of any use. He's here. Soon. Don't let the moon grant your wishes. The year was 2002. I was a young man who had become detached from a tour group in the midst of the Australian outback. After a few hours, I started to succumb to dehydration. I was envisioning a plodding, labored death in the heart of nowhere, but that didn't happen. It seemed like a mirage, but the moon spoke to me. Looking upon me with far-flung craters which felt like remote eyes, the talking rock said it could save me. I followed a misty, moonlit trail across the arid landscape, and I eventually stumbled onto the town I'd been trying to find. Later that night, in my hotel bed, the moon called to me. It offered 3 wishes. I rushed to the window, confused as to how my replenished body, now fed and watered, could still be hallucinating. And yet, I somehow knew that it was real. I knew the moon had saved me from the desert. What do I have to lose by making some wishes to find out? So, I wished for 3 things: money, safety, health. The creature had many conditions, but I heeded the warnings from every story I'd ever been told about both genial and ghoulish genies. The moon made the parameters of its wish-granting quite clear. No wishing for more wishes. No wishing for more wish granters. No wishing for things to give to other people. No wishing for anything that would contradict the laws of your natural realm. The ideal wishes seemed obvious. Money. More money than anyone could ever need. Obviously, I couldn't shower loved ones with wealth. I kept my job to support my family, but I used the riches to support my own needs. There's always a catch with wishing. Becoming the wealthiest man on earth will make me a target. When I realized that, I had the idea for my second wish. Safety. I was not asking for security beyond the laws of nature. I simply wanted assurance that my financial safety net, if it were ever discovered, would be protected. But what about security against the passage of time? I can't wish for immortality. I can employ the world's greatest doctors, of course, but that's not enough. Health. I specified to the moon that I was simply talking about safeguards which would abide by the laws of nature. For example, if I had a genetic proclivity towards developing certain diseases, either physical or mental, perhaps the wish granter could provide a cure. Perhaps the moon could simply conjure a cure for every ailment that could ever face a human being. The rock conceded that even if there were no current cure for certain illnesses, it could provide a solution for every health problem that might befall a human being. The moon couldn't make me live forever, but it could ensure that I live for an absurdly long time. I thought I'd covered all the bases. I truly believed I'd outsmarted some sort of deity. I was a fool. I never should have made any wishes, but I certainly shouldn't have made the third wish. 20 years after my Australian encounter, my wealthy and healthy life took a sour turn. The moon ensured that there would always be a cure in place for any ailment I would face. It had abolished my mental illness, thanks to a wondrous pill that I wasn't permitted to share with others. So, this November, I wasn't fazed when my doctor gave me a harrowing diagnosis. Congestive heart failure, the woman tentatively said. Not to worry, I thought. The wish granter will fix it. It gave me a pill for my mental well-being, and I'm sure it'll give me a new heart, too. Perhaps it'll simply grow one for me. I waited. Like a werewolf in a kennel, I howled at the unresponsive moon for attention. Nothing. After weeks without solution, I started to feel consumed by dread. Has it forgotten about me? The wishes were supposed to apply for the rest of my life. Then, one night, the moon arrived. It didn't speak from the sky this time, it spoke from the darkness of my house. A floorboard groaned in the far corner of the living room, heart thumping rhythmically against my ribcage. I found myself staring into the depths of my lounge's darkened corner. Something was watching me. The direful creature I hadn't seen for 20 years. It had no eyes, or discernible shape, but it had awful white lips, which glowed like a deformed moon in the night sky. Fear gripped me. "It's you," I croaked. "I am sorry," the creature wheezed. "You do not have much time. There's a waiting list for heart transplants, but I thought you'd have some means of speeding things up," I replied, trembling at the hidden thing in the corner of my room. "Yes, I must grant your desire. It is my only purpose." The moon mouth maliciously whispered, "A wish is a contract. I will find a heart for you." Before the creature evaporated, its white, lifeless lips curled upwards into a malevolent grin. The almost human expression filled me with a feeling of terror which cannot sufficiently translate to words. Suddenly, I realized the dread in my heart was more than dread. "Oh fuck," I thought as I clutched my chest. "It's happening." An invisible blade twisted into my heart and I felt my body seize. Blackness swallowed my surroundings. My vision faded. Just one more time, I remember thinking. Let me see Wendy and Maisie one more time. When I awoke, I was in a hospital room. My chest felt light. It was the healthiest I'd felt in weeks. Wendy was sitting at my bedside, tears flooding her vacant eyes, and a smile was forcefully painted on her pale face. "You're awake," my wife whispered. I smiled. "Hello, sweetheart. I must have given you a scare. I feel much better now, though." She sobbed and squeezed my hand with tremendous strength. There was love in that squeeze, but there was also rage. Inconsolable rage. They did it, honey. They gave you... you... She moaned like a wounded animal. You have a new heart. That explained the lightness in my chest, but it didn't explain the fear on my wife's face. Her agonized expression haunted me. Why is she so distraught? I wondered, shuddering. Wendy, I whispered. What's... Maisie, my wife interrupted, now bawling. This evening, she was in an accident. She didn't... Wendy didn't need to finish any of her sentences. I knew what had happened to our daughter. I knew whose heart was in my chest. I knew what the moon had done to grant my wish.